Okay, when to mimic the course during your training program. So it's a great question because depending on what you're doing, depending on what you're kind of training towards, it's really important to mimic the course so that there's no shocks on race day. And you want to eliminate as much of those shocks as possible. If you cannot get to the course and train on the course, which for most of us is a lot of the time, then it's important to kind of have a look at the elevation, have a look what people have talked about it before. Do your research. You've got to do your research so that if, for instance, there's, if you're going to a marathon and at kind of kilometer 25, there's a steep uphill for two kilometers and you're not prepared for that, it's going to hit you hard and it's going to make the last 10 miles, the last 16 kilometers heavy for you, and it's going to definitely alter your pacing structure and alter your plan. So you kind of got to know in advance what's happening, and that's kind of the tip of the iceberg compared to if you're doing a trail race or if you're kind of doing an ultra race and that's in the mountains or whatever. You need to kind of do your research. But when to mimic your race in the training is a really important question. So what I would do is just don't overcomplicate it. So you got to first of all get fit, and if you're on kind of limited time, then adapt this the way that you can. But the perfect scenario would be this: you get fit. So let's say I'm training for Western States, and I know Western States is there's an uphill in the beginning, and then from there it's kind of downhill all the way to the finish. And then, or say I'm training for Comrades Marathon, and 1 year it's up and 1 year it's down, but it's not really up and down. It's kind of like 2,000 meters up, 1,000 meters down, and then the down year is 1,000 meters up, 2,000 meters down. So it's kind of, there's some up and down on both, but it's definitely faster the down than the up naturally, right? So say I'm specifically training for Comrades Marathon. My perfect scenario is I'm going to get fit. So what I mean by that is I'm going to get to a point where there's already structure in my training. I'm already doing a long run at the weekend. I'm already doing midweek interval session where I'm focusing on my lactate threshold. I'm focusing on the point where I can run fast enough for 2 minute, 3 minute, 5 minute, 10-minute intervals so that I'm not going into the red. I'm not accumulating more lactic acid in my blood than my body can clear. That's the simple version, but intervals and long run, that's the important part. The rest of it, whether that's 2 runs, 3 runs, 4 runs, 5 runs per week, is all recovery running and easy running. Once I've got to that point where I'm fit, I feel as if I'm fit, meaning that I can start the training program, specific training program, and that will be tailored towards the race. That program is going to be 10 weeks, and then with a kind of 10 to 14 day taper. And it doesn't need to be any more than that if you've got fit first, right? So get fit. Don't let the first couple of weeks of the training program be a shock to you. So if in your first week you're training for a marathon and your first week is 14 miles with a portion of marathon pace, you don't want that to be a shock to you because you've already kind of got fit and prepared for that within that kind of pre-scheduled training, if you like, yeah? And then when to focus on mimicking the race is really, really important. So you would have probably already done that in the preparation for the training program, ideally, but then you can start to really lay it on within the training program, especially within the first kind of, I'd look at that as that 10-week program as 3 cycles of 3 weeks, yeah? Obviously, plus a week, but you want to focus and mimic that course only in the intervals and the long run. So you don't want to be doing, if it's an undulating course, constantly up and down, up and down, up and down, you don't want to be doing that on your easy runs. You want your easy runs to be all about the objective of, I want to recover it as full and as fast as I possibly can so I can hit the interval session hard and the long run hard. Have fresh legs for the long run is probably a better term, so that I can move forward. My kind of improvement is optimal because I'm hitting the interval session and the long run with fresh legs, and I'm able to work hard in those sessions. So then, in terms of mimicking the course, if I've got a long run and I'm training for Comrades Up, I'm going to do that with it. It's not just up. It's not kind of like Subito Pico Valletta, which is 50k uphill, or Internon Ultra, which is kind of 50 kilometers uphill in Thailand. It's undulating uphill, so it's gradually uphill over the time. So I'm going to find close to me and keep it as convenient as possible. But I'm going to find close to me a stretch of land where I can do that, and maybe it's on loops if it's a long run. So then you've got, you can look after your hydration, and you can look after your nutrition, but it's on land that mirrors the course as possible I can. So I look into detail at that gradient. I look at parts of the race, and maybe, week 1, I look after the first part of the race. Week 2, I look after the next part of the race. Maybe a long run is going up to, for Comrades Marathon, which is 89k, maybe you're going to do a 50k long run. Maybe you're going to do even a 60k long run. And maybe ideally that would be part of a race, which would also the course would also look something similar to Comrades Marathon, up run, yeah? So I'm going to mimic it on the long run, which is a bit easier for you. And on the long run, you mimic your nutrition, what you're going to try to achieve in the race as well. So if I'm aiming to take in 80 grams of carbohydrate an hour, how am I going to do that in a race? What does that actually mean? Where are the aid stations? Or drink stations? How am I going to carry my drinks? Is somebody going to help me along the way? Is somebody going to go to the different points? So I've got that's a big factor, because if you've trained for 80 grams of carbohydrate per hour, and then on the day you can only you miss a bottle, or you kind of miss a gel, and you've got to be able to think, okay, what have the race got on, and what's the plan B? And there's often Powerade or Lucozade or some kind of sports drink or some kind of fruit on those things that you can take in along the way. So mimic your hydration and your nutrition on that long run as well. And then the same for the interval session. So I'd have the interval session on hills. So the interval session, you'll build up to something like, I build up to 7 times 10 minutes at race pace, or at marathon pace. If I'm running an ultra at marathon pace, which will get me ready for to make the ultra that I'm running, whether it's 100k or 50 miles or whatever, it feels like I'm in second gear. And within that, it's all about effort. It's not about pace, it's about effort. So when I say pace, it's kind of 7 times 10 minutes what I'll build up to, and that'll start on something like 20 times 2 minutes, or even like 10 times 1 minute if I'm right at the beginning of the training program. And that might be a nice hill that I'm going to see within the Comrades Marathon. It might be a hill that turns into a downhill. You can do these sessions on a treadmill, or you can do them outside. It's great if you can do it outside on the tarmac, because that's gonna be the Comrades Marathon. If you're running a trail marathon, obviously get out there on the trail and run on the surface that you're going to be running on. Get used to that. And you look around the world and it's different. Like when I'm running in Spain, it's a certain type of Jeep track trail usually. If I'm going on to single track trail, I want to be training on that, because it's not the type, you can't get the kind of stride length you can get on a single track trail, which has got bushes and rocks in the way, and it's more technical than you can on a Jeep track trail, when you can kind of open up and just go, and not really, almost like running on the road. You don't need to think about what's in front of you, you just kind of can flow, right? But in those sessions, I'll also mimic the nutrition. So I'll have the breakfast that I would have before that I'm going to have the race. So that's not going to be any shock for me. It's 5 bananas blended in water, and I have that an hour before the race. That's going to be exactly the same for the long run, and exactly the same for the interval session. And then when I'm in the interval session, I'm taking on 80 grams of carbohydrate an hour, and I'm hydrating to the point. And if there's, I'll research the race. So whatever marathon you're about to do, or whatever half marathon, there will be a drink sponsor for that race if it's a big enough marathon. So they'll have Lucozade, Powerade, all the different ones that you kind of know. I think in Thailand there's a lot of Pokhara Sweat, it's called. It's a little bit fizzy, so it's a little bit strange, but it still does the job. So you know that you've got that plan B to go to, and you know also how many calories are in that Powerade, how much do I need to drink of it, how much potassium's in it, how much magnesium's in it. You go into detail, because if you're going to do all that preparation, if you're going to do 3 months of specific training, and probably 2-3 months of let's get fit first, ideally, with a bunch of races, thrown in at any time, then if you're going to commit that time, you don't want to get caught out by something like, oh, I've missed a bottle or I've missed a gel, and therefore I'm not going to achieve what I've set out to do. Especially if you're traveling to Barcelona to do Barcelona Marathon, or you're traveling to South Africa to do Comrades Marathon, or you're traveling to America to do Western States. Like you cannot, it's especially ultra running and marathon running, it's about problem solving on the go. If you get there and expect everything to go perfectly, it's a bad plan, yeah? Get there, hope for the best, but expect the worst, yeah? And in terms of long runs, a brilliant way to kind of mimic long runs that you're going to be doing in the race is to get into other smaller races, have the discipline to hold back, so not to go at 100%. And I've even done interval sessions within races, and that's not, it's a brilliant way, because you're going to have drinks along the way. You're going to have your drink bottle there. You're going to have kind of gels and stuff like that to attach to yourself. It's going to be a race day situation, and you get that race day practice. You're going to have water along the way, and you're also going to kind of have the adrenaline of a race, and that's not going to be then so much of a shock when you get kind of 3 to 6 months down the line and you're running your main A race. So yeah, those are the times I've mimicked. So in short, mimic your race course and look at it in detail. Look at the profile, look at the twists. Like I got caught out when I was doing Black Canyons. It was like the profile was kind of, net downhill, and it looked like there's a few bumps, but nothing crazy. And then I get there, the floor is unlike anything I've ever seen on the trail before, really sharp rock, and it was really twisty and turny, and therefore I'm kind of off balance all the time. I've got the wrong shoes on. I'm just not prepared for it. But just because I'm overconfident, I've done all the training at the time for a race in New Zealand, Tarawara. I was fit and ready for that, and then all of a sudden, the last minute that's cancelled. This was a COVID race, and I go to Black Canyons in Arizona, and it's unlike anything I'd ever seen before. So in retrospect, what I would do in order to mimic that course is because I'd never ran on anything like it before, I'd have to go and live very close to that trail. The Black Canyon Trail. I'd have to go and live on that for at least 4 to 6 weeks in order to give myself the best chance of doing well. And if you're fit, if you've done training, if you've mimicked the course, and then you can go in kind of 4 to 6 weeks, and not everybody can do that, especially if you're working, but that's how I would give myself the best possible chance of winning that race. There's only one way really to do that, and that would be to go and train on it at least for 4 to 6 weeks. For me, it would need 4 to 6 weeks. If you're an accomplished trail runner and you've already done some big things, maybe you'd only need a couple of weeks to say, this is quite like this course or quite like that course. For me, it was brand new territory, and I suffered, and I fell early, so I did, I only saw kind of a third of the course, but that's what I would do. So yeah, mimic the course, intervals, long run, but also mimic the hydration and the nutrition. Try to get in the amount of carbohydrates that you're going to optimally get in during the race. Good luck.